Oh,
Hello,
Hey, Gary.
how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
All right, Lou.
Oh my God.
Congratulations on finally hanging it up.
Well, Gary, what do you think? It was about time, right? I mean, there are so many assholes there that it's there's no ability to get anything done.
No,
Um,
no, it's
and
awful.
what happened is the first year the budget, because we had so much money, we were able to come to consensus. The second year, with all of this legislation, this crappy legislation, the LBTGQ, plus the voting restrictions, and the rest of the boundary nonsense and so forth.
Mhm.
You would think we were we were under siege, or I mean,
I
just
know.
unbelievable. How true.
well, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Let me just start off by saying that it is a real pleasure for Gary Rayno and I to have you on, Lou, and an honor. You are a guy who has, over the years, had the stick-to-itiveness to keep on keeping on, and
Oh, thanks. Well, we
more than
kept
anything else, that has to be attributed to you. But that was quite a start to the podcast, for us. So I'm gonna try and keep that in if you don't object. But
No, I have no objection. It is what it is.
yeah, Lou, I first met you through our mutual friend Raymond Burton.
Oh,
So I
sure.
would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity, because at some point I know that I'm going to do a podcast about Ray, to just say a few words about that, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty of uh,
Sure.
your career.
Well, certainly couldn't have been a better public servant than Burton, for certain. We met when Walter Peterson was governor, and he was working in the office of Governor Walter Peterson. I was a high school teacher, coach, living in Manchester, and the governor appointed me to the athletic commission. So I went to the office and met Ray Burton, who was standing in the corner, and Cynthia Kirby was there. She was the secretary, uh, and oh God, it was sort of the opening of the door. And Ray, I mean, what can you say about Ray Burton that isn't just he was the quintessential great American. Just a great guy. Just a great guy, and wonderful, wonderful friendship that began that day and ended on the day of his passing. Uh, just the epitome of a public servant. And the old adage that Ray Burton would attend the opening of an envelope, and he did. And he attended everything that was available, and helped anyone and everybody who reached out to him. Uh, had that camera, took those pictures, had those 3x5 cards. Uh, just it was the beginning for me. It was the beginning of an entry into public service. Stuart Lamprey was there, Cynthia Kirby was there, Walter Peterson was there, Ray Burton was there. These are all figures who played a fundamental role in my life as I entered politics, and I've seen all of them pass away, and it's sad to recall these people with great admiration and with great respect, but to think that they've all gone, they've all gone, and really, um, certainly, Gary, reflect back on this because you covered everybody. And you know the change that's taken place with regard to public service. We have a lot, we still have some people who are dedicated, but are they dedicated in the same way as the people I've just mentioned? I really don't think so. I really, really don't think so. Change has taken place, and you know the only thing consistent about life is change, and we are witnessing a dramatic change here in New Hampshire, as well as in the country and really throughout the world. A dramatic change, and I worry about the change. I worry about what's going to happen to us. We do things a little differently now than we did in the past. Although you say, what's next? And I really don't know. I can't believe how much money has been put into the system at this point in time in terms of election and re-election, and raising money has become such a fundamental part of your political life. I remember when I started, $100 was a lot of money. That was a big investment. When I ran for the House in 1972, I think we spent $100. And today they spend what, thousands on House seats. And God only knows what we spend on Senate seats. I know that I spent almost 100,000 to get reelected the last time. The pressure is on because of the costs related and the change that's taken place. You know, the digital format that's now in place. Newspapers are out. It's television that's in. Television is costly. Gee, as I said, the only consistent thing is change, and we're witnessing a dramatic change. But the old guys, you can't forget what they did. The mark that they left on New Hampshire, and certainly Ray Burton, Walter Peterson, Stuart Lamprey. They were giants in the political game, giants in the political game, and left a legacy that really can't be overlooked.
Gary, when did you start covering these guys?
Oh, well, I mean, even when I was working for weekly newspapers, I used to do quite a bit of stuff with Concord and so on, because as you know, there's certain towns in the state of New Hampshire that sort of have a way into the inside, and one of them was New London with Bill Kidder and people like that.
Yes.
And so we always were somehow on the sort of cutting edge with things like landfills and environmental issues and things like that. So I used to spend a lot of time on the phone to people in Concord. But I went to cover the State House in 1989, and it was a different world in 1989 than it is today. That's for sure.
No question. I mean, I arrived in the Senate in 1989.
Yeah, I mean, it was a much more congenial place. And I always used to tell people, when you walked in the Senate, you never knew who the Democrats or the Republicans were, because you know, some of the biggest liberals in the Senate were people like Ralph Huff and Susan McLane.
Right.
And some of the biggest conservatives were Bobby Stevens and, you know, Bob Preston to a certain extent. You know? And it was just really different than it is now. I mean, now you walk in there, you know exactly which party people belong to.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Wow. You sure do.
But if I could continue a little bit here, Wayne, what you brought it up, but you know, Lou, you always talk about relationships.
Yes.
And you were just talking about some that you developed. And I was wondering some of the other ones that was very impactful for you, both in terms of the political world and your personal life, the relationships that you developed.
Well, I think the greatest the key relationship in politics was when I met Walter Peterson. And we drew an immediate positive relationship because of the basketball. You know, Walter was a great fan of basketball. I was coaching basketball at what was then New Hampshire College. He appointed me to the athletic commission, and we became great friends. Great friends. Then I became president of, through changing jobs, I became president of Daniel Webster College. He became president of Franklin Peterson. And we had a group, Brother Joachim, who was the president of St. A's, Walter and I, we did an economic and report for the New Hampshire College and University Council. But, you know, my relationship with Walter was just unbelievable. Walter would come by the house, would have coffee at the house, sit at the kitchen table. My wife would cook for him every once in a while. And of course, we would go to Walter's home, and Dorothy was just fantastic. But the relationship with Walter, being able to talk to him about key decisions I made as an executive counselor, and when I would went on and got into the Senate and so on. Walter, you know, I was the master of ceremonies at Walter's funeral. You know, we had it in Concord at the Concord Center, and she's just fond memories of my relationship with Walter and my relationship with Warren Rudman. A whole different personality, but a truly a giant in New Hampshire politics. And my relationship with Tom Sanders, who was a basketball player for the Celtics, and Don Nelson and Dave Cowens, and these kinds of things have carried me through the years. And you know, you think you have relationships with the political candidates, and when they come, they love you, and when they leave, they don't know who you are. A big difference, right? The big difference. But I've been blessed, Gary, to have relationships, and my relationship with people like you, who were in the office next to me for a long period of time, and I would drop in and see you at that desk, and these things have lasting value. But I think your point about the Senate of the 1970s versus the Senate of the 2000 plus, dramatic difference, and you find it much more difficult to build relationships because the ideology is so different. I mean, they're good people. I'm not going to say that they're bad people, but they're on a different wavelength, and you aren't going to move them. I've stood up in the Senate on more than one occasion, given what I thought was a pretty good speech, and you never change your vote. Everyone's in lockstep, and 14-10. There are 14 Republicans, 10 Democrats, and flip it, there are 14 Democrats and 10 Republicans. So that's what's happened over the years. But the relationships have carried me through my life, and I'm proud of them. I'm blessed to have them, and you know, I spoke at Walter's funeral. I spoke at Dorothy Peterson's funeral. Those relationships lasted until the end of their lives, and I could not be more blessed than to have had them. And you just can't. I just can't say enough about what they did for the state of New Hampshire. And, you know, and Stuart Lamprey was a giant in politics. I talked to Stuart, listened to Stuart, and Stuart ran my gubernatorial campaign in 1982. I just tell you, life's built on relationships, and when push comes to shove, and you got to look back on things, you say, "Geez, I had a good relationship. I got a lot of positives out of it." And when the negatives came, your relationships were solid, and they helped you get through these things.
It seems as if, you know, I am particularly struck by you mentioning Gary in terms of relationships, because Lou, you've always gravitated to the people that I would consider men and women of integrity. And, you know, working with Gary was always, to me, a pleasure, because you knew, first of all, first and foremost, when you talk about the weird dance between politicians and members of the journalism community, that if you're dealing with somebody who has a good bullshit detector, that you damn well better be straight with them. And I
Yeah.
always knew that we could be straight with Gary Rayno, and he would ask the tough questions, but he'd always be fair. And so Gary is a man of integrity, and Stuart Lamprey, and all those people that you mentioned. What happened, Lou? Where did things break?
Well, I think, you know, the best answer I could give is the world changed. And as I said, the one constant in the world is change. And the partisanship grew as time went on, and bipartisanship became very, very difficult to attain. But polarization entered the process. And I couldn't blame anybody more than Donald Trump. I mean, what he did is he ignited partisanship to the point where it has become brutal, absolutely brutal. And just the way he campaigned, the language he used, and so forth and so on, he brought it all to light. But you can't blame him entirely. Look at the people who are in the United States Senate, the Republicans who campaigned for president, come up here and campaign for president, and just you know, ruined. They kind of ruined things, and the partisan nature, the vitriolic nature of the speech, all of this became more and more prevalent as time went on. I mean, I think back, you couldn't find a better presidential candidate than Gerald Ford. Decent, honorable guy, truly a decent, honorable guy. Uh, a Jimmy Carter, a decent, honorable guy. And then you run into some of the people that have run for president lately, and use Trump as the key example, and the craziness surrounding Trump. But think of the senator from Texas. I mean, he didn't help this anymore. The senator from South Carolina didn't help things anymore. And some of the candidates that came here and you know, threw bombs around, and it became the nature of politics as we evolved. And as a result of that, you know, who has a good word to say about a politician today? Nobody. A politician you're defaming the language when you talk about politician. And that we used to think of that in a good light. Those days are gone. In my opinion, they're gone forever. But how did it all start? I think money played a significant role. Wade, you've been involved in a long time. You know what it was like raising money, running around, doing this and doing that.
Right.
And people would say to you, "Well, if you can't raise the money, then you shouldn't be running." Well, you know, that's kind of a bad attitude. People should support you because of the quality of the quality that you bring to the table, your platform, and what you believe in, the kind of character that you bring, and so forth. I think those days are gone, and tragically, in my opinion. I mean, I look at the world, and what's happening worldwide. You know, it's not just in the United States. You know that I taught state and local government at St. A's for a number of years, while I was here in the Senate, and look at things on a worldwide basis. And you say, you know, what's happening? It's not only in America. What's happening what's happening around the world. And you worry. I mean, I worry. I worry for my children, for my grandchildren, and the likes. But a lot has changed, and that's all. And as I say, change is part of the deal. But you know, they used to be courtesy. They used to be some kind of get together, some kind of interaction. I don't think that's present anymore.
Gary, I know you're supposed to be asking the questions, but I would like to know if you see a point when things broke.
Yeah. I think the thing that sort of broke the dam was the Citizens United decision in the Supreme Court
Right.
that opened the money spigot for all these wealthy corporations to just dump money into the political process. I mean, we're talking now where over $1 million was spent in the last 2 elections, just by Americans for Prosperity and various other Koch Foundation organizations in the New Hampshire legislature. I mean, that's why we have what we have. I mean, you spend that kind of money electing people to a $100 a year job, you're messing with the process. It's no longer representative of the people who are voting. It's representative of the people who have the money. And I think that's what we're seeing all over the place. Here, particularly the income inequality is what's really driving so much of this. I think around the world, the top wants more, and there's only one way to get more, and that's to destroy the education system so people will work for less and various things like that.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right on target with the Citizens United thing. And I'll add one more thing to it. And maybe it's because I was the Democratic candidate for governor in 1994. But when Newt Gingrich and his contract with America came out and said, call them your enemy, not the loyal opposition.
Yeah.
That too was an important breaking point for us.
I agree too, and I think the thing about Newt Gingrich was it was all of a sudden about power and not about government.
Yeah, I think that Gingrich played a significant role. That contract for America, Citizens United opened the floodgates for money. The Koch brothers spend God knows how much. I think Viggory and direct mail, Gary, opened the doors. Both on the fundraising side and the persuasive side in terms of changing votes. I mean, all of these things came about, and politics and money drove the trade in a level of sophistication. It became noble to just chastise your opponent. Oh my God, what they! I could think of a campaign when I ran for governor. You remember your employer at the time, the famous statewide newspaper. I mean, they did everything but burn me at the stake. I mean, talk about the witches of Salem. I was the worst thing in the world. Liberal Lou Dallesandro. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that guy becoming governor of the state of New Hampshire? Oh my God! And I mean, I had that for 50 years. 50 years. Of course, the strength of the newspaper was much greater than it is now. But
Well, and you have a unique perspective, Lou, because you started out your political career as a Republican.
Yes, I did.
Talk about making that switch. What happened with you that caused it, and what observations do you have of having been in both of those political parties?
Well, I started out as a Republican, a Walter Peterson Republican. as I said, I became friendly with Walter and friendly with Warren Rudman and Sandy Taft and that Republicans of that vintage who were very moderate. You might even in today's world might say liberal, right? Gary, they were liberal Republicans
Progressives.
and progressive, right? Progressive Republicans, and then I get involved in gubernatorial races, first against Mel Thompson, and that was my battles with him on the executive council were noteworthy. and then of course Monier Sununu and I get in a race for governor for the Republican nomination, and then they just throw me out. They really threw me out of the party, and when I had really no place to go except to change and or to go someplace else that was more comfortable for me, and as a result of that, in the 80s, I became a Democrat because it offered me an opportunity. I remember a cartoon in the Union Leader, Gary, when they had the Titanic picture of the Titanic and me falling off, talking about my change from Republican to Democrat. They were pretty good at characterizing me. And Dobbins was doing the political cartoons at that day, and the best one was when the guy threw the hat at me and severed my head. So there's my head hanging there, and and I say that. My wife got to see that. My kids got to see that. It was a little bit extraordinary, to be honest with you. Talk about going overboard, but that's why I changed, Wayne. I really had no place to go in the Republican Party. They had thrown me aside because my political views, my initial pieces of legislation, my school feeding bill, the school lunch bill, and with Hugh Gallen and Susan McLane, the three of us co-sponsored the food stamp bill, which did not get the governor's signature. It became law without the governor's signature. These things forced me to leave the Republicans, who were dead set against these things, and joined the Democratic Party. And I think it was the right decision. It was a good decision. Probably should have been a D from the beginning, because I came up here from Massachusetts, went to UNH, and with a Democratic tradition and a Democratic background. It just took me a little while to wake up. My wife was always a Democrat. She was the driving force. How's that?
Good. Talk a little
Well,
bit about growing up in because I don't think a lot of people know about that about you, and I think it would be interesting to hear a little of your early life.
My early life was what was interesting. I tell the story about us living on Gladstone Street and a fire in our home that burnt down our home, but we were living on the third floor. And in those days, I looked at the 1940 census report. Who lived in the house with us? My mother, my father, my two brothers, and myself. And then we had an aunt, a couple of aunts living with us, and maybe an uncle. In those days, the family tradition was to take people in. So we're there, and we have a fire that burns down the house, and we're immediately placed in different homes with relatives and friends. So that's my early life, what I remember my early life. And then my mother passed away at a very young age, and again we had a traumatic experience in our life. And I think the one thing that we held on to was the family came and supported us. Aunts and uncles took care of us, and education played a role, and so forth. So that was those were my formative years, and I got to have a great relationship. There were four boys in the family, and my younger brother and I had built a great bond, and that lasted until he passed away. My older brother was sort of off on his own, and the youngest in our family had been just born. He was a very young kid, and so he was certainly he was taken care of, but the separation age-wise created some problems there. So I ended up my schooling played a significant role. I think I could have become a truant and a bad person had it not been for the nuns who took care of me when I was at St. Lazarus School. When we moved from East Boston to Bedford, the nuns that sort of watched over me at St. Joseph's School, and then I went on. But my big break was athletics, Wayne. The fact that everybody in my family became athletics was the great outlet. That's how you could perform. That's how you could build relationships on the team and so forth. So I think all of my life, athletics has played a key role in my formation, and the great relationship I had with my younger brother that lasted until he died. And of course, we admired my older brother, who was just a tremendous athlete and who grew to be a prominent star during his high school days. And so we admired him, and we admired him greatly. So then I have a big break. I ended up at UNH. I originally was a scholarship athlete at the University of Colorado, but it was a little far away from home. So came home, went to UNH, met a girl in my freshman year at UNH, ended up marrying her in my senior year. We've been together for a long time, but we just celebrated our 63rd wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So those are the big changes in my life. Education played a role. Of course, stability. My girlfriend in college and now my wife played a significant role in our family and so on. But life wasn't easy in many ways, but in other ways had a lot of support and help, and the family was during the toughest of times with the fire, the passing of my mother. My family played a significant role in keeping us together, and I could never forget that. Adversity sometimes makes you much stronger, and indeed, I think the adversity played a significant role in my life and the life of my family.
Yeah. Gary, I interrupted you. Did you want to?
That's not, I mean, I think I don't know about you, Wayne. You went to UNH, I know.
Yeah.
And did you meet your wife at UNH?
No, I met
No?
my wife years later. So.
See, I met my wife at UNH, so.
Oh.
Well, I met my wife in sociology class my freshman year, and as I said, we sort of kept it going. kept it going, and all these years later, a big break for me. She was a Manchester girl, and where do I end up? Where's my life end up? In Manchester, New Hampshire. So she was a tremendous influence. But I must say, when times get tough, you have to depend upon your relationships, your family, and they certainly came through for me. And here I am today. You know, we're talking about these things, and you're remembering them, remembering the good times and remembering the bad times. And, they were tough times. And Wayne, you can feel this when you lose a political race. It's devastating. The world has abandoned you, and who do you have to come home to? Your family.
Right.
Let me tell you, there's nothing worse than losing a race when and as always, you think you're the best, and you think you should have won it, but things didn't go your way. It's a devastating situation, and who's there to build you up and to be there for you with your family? And
Right.
in my instance, it certainly was my wife and my family.
And
Nothing,
all
there's
those,
nothing
you
more
know,
hurtful than a political loss, and you know that.
through the good and the bad, those are the things, those relationships and the values that you build as you're living your life like that are what sustain you. And
Yes,
I
yeah.
think that's why people are so fond of you, Lou. Yeah, I'd like to know if there are particular achievements within your career that you're really proud of, or and then we'll talk about the biggest disappointments as well.
Well, I think politically, your great achievement was passing the School Feeding and Nutrition Act in 1973. Who ever thought that we would be feeding kids in school here in New Hampshire? You know, the live free or die state, where when the debate on the floor of the House at that time was, it should be the parents' decision to feed kids lunch. The school shouldn't make that decision to feed them. Oh my God, I never thought I would hear that kind of noise. So we finally we got it passed. That was a great achievement at the time. Many people had tried that before, and it certainly I had great help from Celia Wynn, who was a representative from Nashua and a retired school teacher, just a wonderful person. We were on the education committee together. And then the battle over the food stamp bill, Gary and Wade. Can you believe the commodity distribution program disappeared? That's when they used to give food to people, and the food stamp bill was the replacement. And we had the governor was opposed to the food stamp bill. Governor Thompson was opposed to it. So Hugh Gallen, who had won a special election and who had come to the House, and Susan McLane, we banded together and got the food stamp bill passed. Oh my God. Think of the what would we be like today without food stamps in New Hampshire? Everybody talks about the need for food in New Hampshire. Where would we be without the food stamp bill? Where would our people be? At 50 years later, I mean, it still exists. So I mean, just a terrific achievement. And I got to meet Hugh Gallen, who later became governor, and certainly Susan McLean, who was a wonderful senator and member of the House. But I was a fledgling politician in those days. My first year in elected office, and we were able to pull those things off. So those were two big highlights in my life of politics. I mean, little things, but so meaningful to so many people. And I think the hallmark of good legislation is it has a positive effect on the people, a direct positive effect on people's lives, and that that's something that really rang a bell with me. And I feel very good about that to this day. And I thank the late Governor Gallen and certainly the late Susan McLean for their efforts in assisting on that piece of legislation. And the biggest disappointment of my legislative life was I couldn't get the casino gambling bill passed. Create one place in New Hampshire at Rockingham Park. Build a facility that made sense because we were losing Rockingham Park. Restore horse racing, which had been a staple in New Hampshire for 100 years. Build something that brought a great deal of revenue to the state of New Hampshire, produced jobs for the state of New Hampshire, and significant capital investment. Couldn't get it done. Couldn't get it done. And what's left today are 20 little charitable gaming facilities that aren't so little. So that's my greatest disappointment, not being able to get that done, just not letting that happen when I knew it provided a lot of things for a lot of people. And hey, that's by the boards now. Charitable gaming is here to stay, and that dream that I had is gone. That's lost. And another couple of things that I'm really proud of it. I finally got the foster grandparent program back in the budget. Oh my God! Do you know how long that took? That took years and years of trying to do that, bringing it up over and over and over again, and people finally recognized the need for the foster grandparent program. Hey, I've lost a lot of debates. I've won a few. The fact that we were able to get the bill passed that gave adopted people the ability to find out who their parents were. That was a fight that I needed a lot of help on. It took years to get it done, and we finally got it done. So that was another very important piece of legislation, with great help from my colleagues in the House at the time. We finally got that done. So got something done, but the biggest disappointment remains the fact that we couldn't get a casino for New Hampshire, and its replacement is here to stay. And we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. But a lot of ups and downs in this life, as you know, Wayne.
Yeah.
A lot of ups and downs.
The relationship that you had with Ray Burton, did that start early on in your
Yes. Yeah, as I said, I was I walked into the governor's office I think it was in 1968 or 69. I just had a wonderful basketball team that had just a great record, and there's Ray standing in the corner for my meeting with the governor. When the governor asked me if I'll serve on the athletic council, nobody knew what the athletic council was. Who knew? Bobby Stevens made that famous as the boxing commission. So I met Ray, and oh God, what a wonderful association. We took our plane trip when we visited every airport in the state of New Hampshire. Every airport in the state of New Hampshire, we would meet and greet. Ray's committee to do the right thing. Holy mackerel! Now the committee to do the right thing. Oh Jesus, that was, and the parties at his house when he brought everybody together, and the church ladies would serve you. I remember getting that one piece of ham on the plate. Oh God, and sitting in his room by the fire, and oh, I mean, what a guy! His car, his parades, and as I said, geez, talking to Ray, and when I was out of office, helping me, we served on the executive council together. Just talking to him on the phone, and remember when his mother was his answering service? He'd get his mother. And then, I'm answering for Ray Burton. Oh God. How unique a politician was Ray Burton. That picture in the executive council chamber, when I look at that, I say, he's going to walk out of that picture and rejoin the council. It's bigger than life. It's bigger than life. Great portrait. Just a great portrait. And it's just remarkable. But the Burton stories go on and on. The Burton newspaper that he got me to do a Dallesandro newspaper, but the Burton Reporter, he passed that out, and the Colbs. Oh, everybody had a Colb, a Burton Colb, Burton for certain. I mean, the potholders that he passed out. I mean, what got my ideas from him about campaign gifts. We have a fundraiser every year for my birthday. We give a gift. That thought emanated from Ray Burton. The
Uh-huh.
potholes, the combs, this and that. As I said, you can't create another Ray Burton. It's just impossible. The image and likeness of Ray Burton is over the State House. It's there. It'll be there forever. It'll be there forever. He was a one of a kind, and that was it. That was it.
What kind of what kind of an effect do you think the loss of the Highway Hotel had on civility among legislators?
Oh, I think a tremendous effect. It's a very, very good point. They could gather at the Highway Hotel. You know, I only had the opportunity to see that for a couple of years. But remember when we used to have one fundraiser, and that was for the Speaker of the House. One fundraiser, and it would be at the Highway Hotel, and they'd give the Speaker a present. But I think there was a lot of drinking at the Highway Hotel, obviously, and that was another interesting time when they would give samples. Remember those days? No, they put a stop to that, but the Highway Hotel was the great mixing place of the state. If you wanted to meet somebody, talk to somebody, it was the Highway Hotel. And a great loss when that disappeared. Now there's really no place to go. Where do you meet today? You're lucky. The cafeteria in the State House. You know, the Barclay House across the street, people don't go there anymore. What other restaurant is available in the city where people could go and hang out? That doesn't exist. But the Highway Hotel was really something. Really something. Great nights at the Highway Hotel.
Is there something that could be done to encourage more civility among legislators, short of restoring the Highway Hotel?
Well, you know, committees used to have after session get-togethers, you know, and the committees had more rapport. And that's disappeared because, you know, the committees caucus before they meet. Now, I don't ever remember that happening. That's a recent phenomenon that happened within the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years. Can you imagine caucusing before a committee hearing? We do that in the Senate. The Republicans caucus before the Finance Committee meets. Well, there are 5 Republicans on the Finance Committee and 2 Democrats. The 2 Democrats, we look at each other. That's our caucus. Okay, what are you going to do? and the Republicans caucus. These are other indications of the polarization. But what could be done, Wayne? I really don't know. What's going to make people more friendly? People hate each other now. That's the one common thing that I see. Everybody hates everybody. It is amazing to me, the common thread that runs through our society today. And it's awful. So what could be done? I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't do the Highway Hotel again. You can't do anything like that. And what's the next best thing? Now they caucus. They caucus in the cafeteria. The Democrats caucus in the cafeteria. The Republicans caucus in the House chamber because they're the majority. That's the next best thing that we have today on how to create civility and get people together.
Right, and that just makes the partisanship worse, doesn't it? When they
Absolutely.
they caucus, and I harken back to electing Ralph Huff Senate President
Right.
in 1992, and ending the caucuses. We all had lunch together in Ralph's office. That was kind of one of the great benefits of having a small Senate. But you know, so Jack Barnes and I would go at each other over the lunch table and say, I'm going to get you today, Wayne, or I'm going to get you today, Jack. But it would end with a smile and a handshake.
Well, Jack Barnes was my nemesis all of his time in the Senate that we shared together. Both UNH guys, and I think he had a great affection for the university. He met his wife at the university, but we were bitter combatants on the floor of the Senate. I will say that.
Yeah, yeah.
Bitter combatants.
Is there anyone among the Republican senators now that you think makes an effort to work with the Democrats?
Well, I think Denise Ricciardi reaches out. She's good. I think, Jeb Bradley, the president, to some extent. Those two. Sharon Carson, who's the majority leader, I'm sure reaches out to people, but not in the same way, Wayne. Not in the same way. A lot of telephone conversations take place now. People call it, I think, from what I hear anyway, a lot of people call each other at night, and that's the way they keep it. That's the way they keep in touch. But I don't think I've seen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Gary. I don't think I've seen Republican and Democratic senators having lunch in the cafeteria since I've been in the Senate.
Wow.
No.
And it's caucus upstairs if you're in the majority, caucus downstairs if you're in the minority. And that's how life goes. That's the story of the game as we see it, as we speak. And I don't see that changing.
Well, certainly not without leadership from somebody, but
yeah, it's got to be on both sides.
Right.
But isn't it a kind of a top-down issue? I mean, there's so much money now in politics, and a lot of it's coming from the national parties. And I mean, it's sort of like they're telling you this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
And it makes it very difficult to do what you used to be able to do, which is, I mean, you think about the issues that really had bipartisan solutions, like education funding, for example.
Yes.
Those things don't seem to be possible anymore in the same way that they were then.
I think you're absolutely right. They're not possible. They're not possible anymore. Governor, I think I don't know how much I know he doesn't reach out a lot to Democrats. This particular governor, but I don't know what he does with Republicans. And you got to have that. You got to have that relationship. People have got to want to be engaged, and I just don't think that's the case anymore. People are thinking about their next step. That's what's on everybody's mind.
It's all about the next election, isn't it? I mean,
exactly. It's about the next election. Where am I going?
Yeah.
Up or out is really what it's all about. But
yeah,
amazing.
Now, where did the moniker Landslide Lou come from?
Well, Joe Kelly Lavasser and I had a bit of struggle, and the election went to recount, and I ended up winning in the recount by 135 votes. So that was my most highly contested. He ran against me 3 times, and that was the big one. People have a habit of running against me on multiple occasions. I think another opponent, Kala Garecki, ran against me 3 times. Joe Kelly Lavasser ran against me 3 times. The Republicans always were looking for a repeat performer. And I'll tell you, bitter races. That's another thing I must say to both of you guys. That Gary, you saw the races, and you have an idea of what they called me during some of these races.
Mm.
But one of them was terrible, and that was a race that revolved around children and the abortion issue, which has never disappeared. And they had some terrible things at the polls. And I made a call to the Republican Party and I said, these things have got to go. You can't do this. You can't do this. That's way out of line. And they did pull those things down, but my God, awful. And I think that's what's happened in politics. And that election, told the story. 135 votes in the recount. Oh man, let me tell you, sitting on pins and needles in that one, and that was my landslide. That was a slide, all right.
I suppose I'm making light of it, but it seems that the ability to for humor to break through with us has even fallen short. I mean, I remember some pretty intense, as you said, Lou, debates on the issue of abortion, of choice, and I won't remember the name of the legislator who got up at the very end of the debate and who said, there's all this talk about when life begins. He said, I'll tell you when life begins. He said, when the kids leave home and the dog dies. And the whole place broke out in laughter and cheering.
Well, I gotta tell you, and I said this at our press conference when I announced that I wasn't seeking re-election. The same issues that were on the table 50 years ago are on the table today. Abortion hasn't been settled, hasn't been solved, right? That's still a huge contentious issue. Education, it was a contentious issue then. We're going to court again, but the Supreme Court has taken the Conval case. Hasn't been solved. We thought we solved it in 1998. We didn't. We came up with a partial solution, I guess. But the same issues, they're still there. They're still omnipresent. Mental health is a big issue now. Big issue now. Well, when I first came to the legislature, we had 2,000 people at New Hampshire Hospital. We had the Laconia State School. There wasn't a lot of talk about mental health because people were stowed away at New Hampshire Hospital and Laconia State School. Then we had the closing of the mental hospital of the hospital in Concord, New Hampshire Hospital, and people were sent back to the communities. What happened? We have the mental health problem, right? Same situation. And think of the people. And you must remember Terry Noddy,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kenny Noddy, who
Noddy.
battled
Or
Health and
Christmas
Human
trees.
Services forever. Remember her smoking her cigarette at the Appropriations Committee? Theodora P. Noddy was the advocate for mental health. Oh, the strong advocate for mental health. And Major Wheelock, who
Yeah.
Thompson appointed head of New Hampshire Hospital and said he regretted it the next day. Oh God. So, I mean, the problems of the past are the problems of the present. We got to solve them. Someday, somehow, we've got to solve them. Because if we don't, we just keep doing the same things over and over again and don't have any positive result. That's a problem in and of itself. So
Is it a money problem though?
Well, we throw a lot of money at it, Gary, and we do that over and over and over again. Do we do it, I think, properly? You know, sometimes, and sometimes we think, well, throw some money at it and and it'll solve itself. We have never been overly generous about anything in this state, from my perspective. When we've had money, we've made some gains. When we don't have the money, we retract and we make significant cuts. And what we've done over the past few years is we've eliminated revenues, and those, as your article clearly indicates, you know, we're on a road to disaster here in the state of New Hampshire. With all of the taxes we've eliminated, and with the fact that the taxes we have in place are not producing, we are setting the stage for disaster. So throwing money at it, if you have the money, it's one thing. If you don't have the money, you cut. Not a good
I
thing.
I just remember when I first went to Concord was in the late 80s, and the revenues were falling through the floor. And they had just funded this, if you will, the decentralization of mental health
Yes.
under Don Shumway, and they had all the community health centers all set up and everything. And they were fairly healthy, and I remember Don telling me that they had people that could ride around with the police in Manchester at night, so that they would be able to take care of the problems and the mental health issues rather than through the police action, and it was a fairly robust system. And of course, where did we start cutting when revenues started going through the floor? The mental health system, those community centers that was just barely been established.
Sure.
And they never coming back to where they were when that was what, almost 40 years ago almost.
Sure. And
You
who's in trouble today? The
Yeah.
community mental health centers.
Yeah.
We had to take what, $5.5 million of ARPA funds and get them so that Concord, Manchester, and the Seacoast could get out of debt, because they're running big deficits. They're
Yeah.
running big deficits. A lot of reasons for that, obviously, but will the $5.5 million hold them? Yeah, sure, for now. But what about the future? And you're absolutely right. Don Shumway, great guy, wonderful commissioner, a very innovative and creative guy. I have the greatest of respect for him. He's one of my dear friends. I think did a great job as commissioner. Did a great job as commissioner, but you cannot solve all of the problems by terpsichore, which is, you know, we'll look at the matching deals we made with the federal government so we could get the federal money, that circular situation that we created, and then we had to abandon it because it was found to be illegal. How we got money from the feds. We've done a lot. We've done a lot of things. A lot of things, and but the bottom line is, you got to fund them. If
Yeah.
you're going to have these programs, you got to fund them, and it's going to take general fund revenues in order to do that. In order to get general fund revenues, you got to have the ability to tax, and the business taxes, BET and the BPT, should be at a reasonable rate. That is lowering the rate. Now, see what happens when you eliminate interest and dividends. What's going to happen? You just can't. You can't expect a robust economy to fill in the gaps, because the robust economy isn't robust all the time. There are ebbs and flows in the economy. We know that, and as a result, bang, we have what we have.
Well, I think about Ralph Huff, who was, you know, a strong advocate for some kind of a broad-based tax, but he would always joke about the fact that you know, here was the reality of life. He said, "We are the guy who has 50 old beat up heaps in his backyard and just keeps fixing that car in the driveway using those heaps."
Well,
Well,
yeah, one of the first budget committee conferences I ever covered, I was sitting there with Dennis Murphy, who was the NEA's lobbyist at one point, at that
Yeah.
point. And it was, they just slashed something. I said, how can they do that, Dennis? He says, Gary, you can never underestimate the New Hampshire legislature's proclivity to be cheap.
You know, then he was right. Murph was a great guy, a really terrific guy. Governor Gallen's #1 guy at the time, and he's absolutely right. You can never underestimate the legislature's proclivity to be cheap. Yep, it's true. It's true, and yet, Gary, think of the monumental mistakes that we have made that have cost millions and millions of dollars by being cheap and not doing the right thing at the right time. Sometimes it costs you 3 times as much money, and you got to pay it. And we're paying it now. Look at YDC. My God, that we think that's going to end up costing $500 million. We took $100 million out of the rainy day fund to begin paying these people who were terribly treated at the YDC. Why did that happen? How did it happen? You know, what, not paying attention to business, not hiring the right people. There's a million different reasons why, but look at the final result. 1,000 cases, 1,000 cases to be adjudicated. That one case that was settled for $38 million, they kind of threw out the verdict, but if that stands, what's that going to do? What kind of a tone is that going to set for future decisions? Boy, I'll tell you, a lot to think about. A lot to think about.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken. Very well taken. I put that in the archives, Wade. Don't let that one get away.
Yeah, what, despite your obvious frustration, Lou, you have given an awful lot to the state of New Hampshire and to the people of New Hampshire for a long time. And we are so grateful for your leadership on all of these things, including the food stamps issue.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Look, and I loved what I did. You're doing what you love and loving what you do. I would come to the Senate and just say to myself, I am the luckiest guy in the world. I am a New Hampshire state senator. Can you believe that? And had great people like Johnny Gallus, who became my dear friend, like Michael Downing, who became my dear friend. The kind of relationships that I created, or that were created when I joined the Senate with those kinds of people, just, you know, things that meant so much to me then and mean so much to me now. I was very lucky. I am very lucky. I liked what I was doing. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
If you could leave the people of New Hampshire with one final thought about what would help us to go into the next few decades in a more harmonious way, what would that be?
Well, I think we have to think about doing things together again. Forget about polarization. Let's think about what we can do to help one another. Let's think about what we can do to help the state. And let's think about what it was like when you were looking for help and somebody came to help you, and do that for somebody else. You know, the old thing, let's play it forward. Let's try to make it better for those who are going to come after us, and let's do that together. That's it. I mean, think about it. Just think about that. How I can help somebody, how I can make a difference. And everybody can do that. Everybody can do that. Doesn't cost you a dime. Just be nice to people. You know, care about people. That's the message I'd like to leave to to those who follow me is, hey, he wasn't a bad guy. At least he tried to do the right thing. Living in the Ray Burton tradition of always be there for somebody and never let them down.
We want everybody to be a part of the committee to do the right thing.
Yes, we all should seek membership in the committee to do the right thing.
Lou Dallesandro, thank you so much to my partner here, Gary, and this has been really enjoyable.
It's been great for me. Thank you. Great working with you, Gary, and Wayne. I do remember when you were running for governor, you stopped by our place a couple of times. And Gary, keep writing those articles. They're terrific.
Well, thank you, Lou.
Yeah, really, and yeah, you know, we do have a lot to be thankful for, and we should think every day about how lucky we are, and try to pass that luck along to others. That's all.
Thank you very much, Lou.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Wade. Thank you, Wade. And stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great, great, great American Day. That's what I'm hoping for everybody. Take
Thanks,
care,
Lou.
guys.
You too, Lou.
Thank you.
Yep.